students. I'm Dr. Smita Patil, currently an associate professor with School of Gender and Development Studies, IGNOU. Today I'm going to discuss about this topic, violence within communities, which is part of the BGS 012 course, and we are going to understand through this how one is going to understand violence within communities. The community often creates an impression of harmony among its members. On the contrary, there are power relations that impact a community. There are issues related to the hierarchies within a community, impact of external power relation to decide the nature of the communities. It reproduces patriarchy in multiple ways. Modern society coexists within its laws and custom. It exists with such contradictions. Such so-called societies have become modern is also need to be analyzed in a differentiate modernity from the tradition. There are societal contradictions that impacts the nature of relations among the members of the community. It is also impacted by the political economy of the national and international level. Communities cannot exist outside such political and cultural orders. So therefore, in this lecture, we will study how communities are undergoing through various forms of schism and consensus across their members. Before we get into this debate, it is necessary to understand patriarchy and its manifestation. So before delving into this epistemological or the knowledge related dimension of the category of patriarchy, one needs to have a rudimentary understanding of that category. The literal meaning of the patriarchy is a rule of the father. It was deployed to refer to the fathers of the tribe of the Israel. It is used in the context of the government, of the family, religious institutions head, and the society of the fathers. It is deployed to show a social system grounded in the authority of the male heads of the household. So contemporary feminist theories use this term to refer to male domination. It is observed that, for instance, and I'm quoting from Durkheim's work, Durkheim's views, the transition from claim to the patriarchal family to conjugal family is connected to the phase that family solidarity rests on both person and things, unquote. While discussing the violence within the communities, one has to understand the various perspectives on the family. It is analyzed that the patriarchal family has increased the moral scope of the wife and the mothers. Some scholars analyze patriarchy as a part of anti-status quoist ideology and practices. For instance, Friedrich Engels analyzed that the abolition of the monogamous patriarchal family was needed for the emancipation of the woman. At the same time, they were critics of the class-based inquiry that could not capture the unique nature of the class status of the woman within the patriarchy and capitalist system. It is critical that a major difficulty is that the Marx and Engels, blinded by the entrenched patriarchy of their day, did not identify women as a member of the oppressed proletariat. So patriarchy is also determined the woman, work and gender. The gig economy, for instance, which is a very, very common now in the contemporary world and even in the Indian context, the gig economy in the new liberal phase of the current capitalism structure, the nature of the work and the gender labor. However, one should have a fundamental understanding of the patriarchal power while exploring the violence within the communities. What is the nature of the patriarchal power then? Power and domination for Adams and Lee need to be understood in the context of Max Weber's reading of social relation as a conflict relation. Weber analyzed how the structure of the domination determines the social sphere. Goods and marketable skill-related domination is the part of the indirect form of the domination. It is noted that the boundaries that mark this domination are fluid. Weber argued that, and I quote, clear-cut antithesis between factual power which completely out of the position and by way of interest compromises in the market, and the authoritarian power of the patriarchal or the monarch with its appeal to the duty of the obedience as such. Unquote. It is noted that all forms of the domination need self-justification or legitimacy. Weber analyzed three forms of domination or the three principles of the legitimation, such as traditional, charismatic, and rational legal. They are the ideal types of domination or legitimation. It is observed that such forms of an accord occurring in the historical really constitute combination, mixture, adoption, or modification of these pure types, unquote. So, tradition or custom determines the nature of the traditional domination, and then it is justified or sanctifies the position of the ruler. Patriarchy is considered form of domination. It is further noted that it is the patriarchy linked to the household or the claim. What decides the claim to legitimacy? Max Weber discusses the legitimacy grounded nature in a decent God or the divine event. It is noted that the claim based on a divine connection can be a male or a female. It is also noted that the claim is carried out through the male line. It makes the patriarchal exercise personal power, reverence for tradition and custom may force the subordinate to obey the patriarch. Patriarch may be replaced due to the hereditary lines of the patriarchal succession. Patriarchal domination acquires various forms such as feudalism. Patriarch thus maintains absolute power over the subordinate section. It is analyzed also that the administration by the patriarch is personally held and it negates the border between the public and private. It is observed that women sometimes gain power in patrimonial system, but they are analyzed as the, and I quote, stands in for their male kin or offspring, and their exercise of power are unusual and short-lived. Patriarchal power is a pure male power and derives from the basis of the household authority, superior strength, and patriarchal knowledge and experience, unquote. So it is described the power of the men, and again quoting, men as against women and children, of the able-bodied as against those of the lesser capability of the adult against the child, of the child against the young, unquote. Women and children are the subject who have to obey the patriarch. It is noted that, and I quote, whether the woman is a wife or a slave regardless of the facts of the paternity, unquote. Weber analyzed the nature of the patriarchal household organization. Weber thus provides a nuanced understanding of the patriarchy. There are various interpretations related to the patriarchy. Social, theoretical, and purely social science-based perspective proliferate. The readings on the category of patriarchy, it is important to revisit those perspectives on patriarchy to revitalize the understanding of the violence within communities. Henneman discussed the, and I quote, totalitarian patriarchy, unquote. Totalitarian patriarchy is, and I quote again, a primordial patriarchal disposition for the human race, unquote. So men's perspective are regarded as the general gender history and they are called the patriarchal theory. It is considered a fundamental theoretical premises that operates behind European philosophical and political thought. It is focused on the power called father and results in the denial of the motherhood kinship and structure. There are othering and conceptual dilemmas in such understanding of the patriarchy. It is observed that, and I again quote, Depot has argued that this basic patriarchal ideology was reproduced at the state level in the European model, but the actual concept of the state comes to the European from the Egyptian of Africa as a result of the direct capitalism. unquote. The patriarchy and matriarchy are contested in the context of the race and geopolitics of the ideas. Scholars across the various racial global locations have generated diverse reading on the category of patriarchy. Matriarchy is often analyzed as a social order that challenged the patriarchal society. It is the social organization in which mothers act as the head of the families. Engels discusses it as a role of the woman in the hunter-gathering society. Those societies did not have the idea of the property rights, however, the patriarchy emerged as a consequence of the privatization of land rights. Patriarchy is also equated with that of the conquest. The idea of the matriarchy also challenges the universal nature of the category of the patriarchy. Scholars have discussed the shift from the right of the mother to that of the right of the father. There are diverse critics of the dominant understanding of the patriarchy. It is noted that, and I quote, the mother-child relationship, in Weber's view, simply a natural pre-social relationship that only become a social relationship when men organize household and acquired control over women's sexuality so that the connection between male parent and the child could be legally established. Weber claimed that great empires of the Far and Near East, India and Mediterranean, as well as Northern Europe, all developed out of the patriarchal household organization. Weber asserted that the idea of the matriarchy is inaccurate due to the lack of the evidence, and I again quote, if any other form of the kinship arrangement other than patrilineal relationship, unquote, ever since kinship relations have been regulated by the law, again unquoting this. There are racial constructions related to the matriarchy as well as. For instance, it is noted that, and Patricia Hill Collins questioned the white scholar's description of the black woman as a powerful matriarch who, and I quote from Collins' work, allege emasculate their lovers and husband, unquote. Adams and Cindy observed that in this interpretation, the absence of the black patriarchy is used evidence for the black culture inferiority and black man's underachievements. W.E.B. Du Bois earlier observed that, and I'm quoting, that black women's centrality is a black families, unquote, was not again quoting cause of the African American social status, unquote, but, and quoting again, outcome of the racial oppression and poverty, unquote. It is analyzed that Chick and Tadeu postulated four cradles or the histories of the kinship and gender. Africa as the agriculture, matriarchal South, Europe and nomadic patriarchal North, the Mediterranean basin as the middle belt where matriarchy proceeds patriarchy, Western Asia as a zone of confluence. What led to such reductionist understanding of patriarchy then? It is noted that in all the so-called scientific comparative restriction by the 19th century theorists, African data was left out. Significantly, it was African data that effectively overturned the theoretical of the general evolution of the kinship. The concept of the matriarchy as a female rule has been a main reason why the idea was ruled out as a non-existence in the history. For instance, Duke marshals an array of the empress and the queens from as far as the black in the 19th century BC and through into recent history from Ethiopia, Egypt and the rest of the Africa to challenge this Eurocentric conclusion. Deep observed that in a pre-colonial Africa, there was no transition from the matriarchy to patriarchy, since the social structure was essentially matriarchal in the sense of female rule. The female transmission of the property and descent, and the men being the mobile element in the marriage and sexual union. Fundamental changes in the African social structure began with Arabo-Islamic invasion and become more far-reaching under European imperialism. So patriarchy and its changing nature have been addressed by the scholar. It is argued that main and patriarchal ideologies control women's reproductive and sexual capacities, and that as a result women are trapped by their reproductive and sexual capacities, and that as a result women are trapped by their reproductive anatomy and by a dogma of the compulsory heterosexuality. Capitalism readily impacts the social system throughout the world. It is important to understand the patriarchy in a new liberal phase of the contemporary capitalism. Gendering for green can be located in the context of the intersections with capitalism. Kate Millett analyzed how the gendering of the individual is being carried out from the top to the bottom through the process known as internal colonization that operates in and through monolithic patriarchy or via patriarchal and capitalist forces, as traditionally explicated by radical and dual system feminist. Capitalist patriarchy as a category unveiled the complex relation of capitalism and patriarchy. It is also observed that then capitalism used patriarchy. Again, in patriarchy is defined by the needs of the capital as a, this is how the patriarchy operates as a male sexual supremacy, provides the sexual hierarchies, ordering of the society of the political control, and as a political system cannot be reduced to its economic structure, while capitalism as an economic class system driven by the pursuit of the profit feeds of the patriarchal ordering. Patriarchy is an ideological system, thus limits the social mobility of the woman. It is noted that patriarchal hegemonic power signifies limits and constrain individual agency and self-actualization, particularly that of women, whose significantly reduced life chances in comparison to men are reflected in gendered inequalities in poverty, health, and in various other spheres such as unemployment, and systemic violence related to the gender relation, thus undermine the spirit of the egalitarian society. Now, coming back to the original topic, violence within communities, one has to look at the power relation within community often operates in overt and covert ways. Their visible power relation, integration differences may be caught within the overall structure of the community. Social stratification redefines the community in multiple ways. It fragments and polarizes the community as well. The cohesive nature of the community may operate in an ideal level. Moral education and its relation with ethos, religion complicate the nature of the ethics. The position of the individual is often questioned in plural ways. At the same time, the individual cannot be completely detached from the ethical space of the community. Actions and consequences of the member of the community question the nature of the ethics as well. Violence within the communities challenges the existence of the individual in particular and communities in general. The community looks at the violence within the community is in complicated manner. The community may have the idea of good action and taboos. At the same time, the question is whether community can derive an internal critic or not. So it is observed that violence against women among the Beba is considered as taboo. Indeed, beating one's wife is a serious crime. Committing suicide through hanging individuals are thus encouraged to seek other avenues within their families and society in solving their problem instead of restoring to society. There are meta-narratives on the dominant construction related to the health and gender relation within the community. Such projection of the community often is uncritical of its ideology and practices. It is also not helpful to the access the relation across the members of the community. Scholars in India have analyzed the methodological tension that emerge while studying the violence within communities. Social sciences-based research on marriage demonstrate difficulties in unveiling such conceptual world of internal community linked tension. It is analyzed that the discussion on dowry have been particularly tied to the issues of bride burning and has both enabled and obscured the issue of the marital violence. Women's groups have been active in both issues through unevenly so across times and place. Importantly, there have been a tendency for studies to focus on violence per se. Unwittingly, perhaps, this feeds into the idea that violence is a pathology rather than embedded in the culture and political economy of the contemporary marriage, kinship, and gender. A critique of the perceived normality of the marriage and gender practices have entered the frame in some studies of honor killings seen primarily in certain regions of the subcontinent such as parts of Pakistan and northern India, and there are a lot of studies like, for instance, Rajni Barwal, Prem Chaudhary, which you can sort of look at, sort of gain more knowledge about it. So religious and caste-based violence led to the polarization based on the diverse caste-cum-religious identities. There are dominant section and subordinate section within the community. Violence may erupt between the internal and hierarchical rank before affording the conflict at the external level. Racial intolerance to fragment the idea of the community. The question of honor is always been there. Social institutions reproduce crime in a particular way. It access conformity and deviance in a particular manner. Honor killing is much discussed across diverse disciplines. It is observed that, and I quote again the work from Paliwal and Ravinder Kaur's work, that reports of what is called honor killings, violence, attempts to prevent self-choice or intercaste marriages are also frequent in North India and Pakistan. Khap panchayats have attracted the people across the diverse streams of the academics due to its primitive and diabolical character. There are popular perception and academic perception related to the Khap panchayat. The nature of the Khap panchayat and its transition from the tribal to the caste council shows its various transformation. The norm, culture, morality of the religion are governed by the several male members. This particular structure of the Khap shows its patriarchal nature. Punishment on or honor killing by the Khap panchayat question the existing legal system and civic sense. Honor killing is usually analyzed as the response to the loss of power by youngest marry outside the caste or the community norms. The existence of honor killing shows the existence of the barbaric practices in our community. The role of the Khap panchayat is discussed in this context. So it is further argued to seek the possibilities of the modernization of the Khap panchayats. The lack of the reform converts such institution to one of that, and therefore according to the local Khap panchayats, those who marry within the same gotra and the same village are regarded as committing insane, and subsequently as a union is branded as unacceptable and invalid. Khap panchayats are criticized for declaring death orders for those couples who do intercaste marriages. Marriage between diverse gotra people that belong to the same village is not acceptable to the Khap panchayats also. So sometime in the case of some gotras, the bride from the village is compelled to move to the another village to join her husband. So however, there should not be any kind of prior ties to the kinship with either their mother-in-law or their sister-in-law. Therefore, all women and men of the similar kin and same village are restrained by the morality of the brother-sister relationship, norms and values codified by the Khap panchayat and So social shaming and punishment of the Khap panchayats show their withdrawal from the modernity. And culture of the barbarity is not challenged by the economic development of this region. Capitalism thus is not able to annihilate the barbaric social practices, and who raise in the honor crimes shows the persistence of the reactionary ideology, clan caste and patriarchy. Scholars have studied this, and one could see that the ways in which that it has engaged to us. So before I sort of conclude this, the idea is that you have to understand how the manifestation of the patriarchy operates, and within the community at what level when the conflict arises, how it operates at every level within the community across the globe, within India. Thank you.